everybody, and welcome to the iRock Knits podcast. Today we're starting in the kitchen before we get to the knitting because I have to show you what happened this morning. I was digging in the kitchen cupboards and I found some yeast, and the pockets were expired, and I thought, does it really matter? And then I thought, what would Nancy Birtwistle do, winner of season 5 of the Great British Bake Off? I got out some lining paste, mixed up some dough, put it in the oven. Wait until you see what I got. You guys are not going to believe this. Hi, Hunker Downers. Should we try this again? Did I surprise you? I borrowed a little phrase there from Leslie Jordan, Hunker Downers. But I hope I made you laugh today. I hope I made you smile. So go grab all your expired yeast and use it up. My name is Corey Eichelberger, and I live in the southwest corner of the Twin Cities. And iRock is Corey spelled backwards, so iRock Knits is my moniker everywhere on the internets, as well as my website, and also where you can email me, Corey@iRockKnits.com. So welcome today. Announcements today, so let's get started and jump right in, okay? First, I will be doing a live Zoom event on Wednesday, May 6th, late in the afternoon for the Flying Needles Yarn Shop out of Virginia. I met that yarn store owner in Rhinebeck last fall, and we kind of hit it off, and so she has asked me to come on to the Zoom. I'm going to have a few things to talk about and a couple of sneaky peek things from behind the scenes, but if you are free on that Wednesday afternoon, it's open to everyone. And she has the information on the Flying Needles website for that yarn store, and then you can click through. I'm pretty sure she'll probably put up the Zoom meeting number and probably a password. So if you want to mark your calendars now, we'll get together and chat a little bit. I put up a interesting list. Last podcast, I was looking for the number of the podcast that I had told a Corey stories, and I couldn't find it, and I didn't know which one I told it in. I wanted to reference it for someone, and so I went out and went through the show notes for 43 episodes and wrote down what the Corey stories for that week was. So I would also like to do that with the tips or tricks that I have shared in the show notes. I got most of the notes. I don't always have a Corey story on the podcast, but if you are out watching old back episodes because you haven't caught up yet and you are interested in keeping some notes for me while you watch, will you get in touch with me and let me know? I have a list of the numbers in the Ravelry group, and I have Corey's stories for episodes 2, 4, 5, 8, 11, 12, 13, like that. Like I have it written out what the story was for the week so that I can refer back, and I need to do the same thing for the tips and tricks. So somebody out there who is watching old episodes, let me know. Also, I am going to change the music on the beginning of the podcast when I finish my second year here at the end of summer. I used all the same music for the first year, and then now I'm using the Baby Elephant Walk by Henry Mancini. However, YouTube gives me a copyright infringement tag every time I use music from outside, and it doesn't mean anything. It basically is a little tag to let me know that they know that I use music that might not belong to me. And so I'm looking for someone who has a skill set around making some theme music. So if you have that skill set, or you have a relative, son, daughter, musician, singer, piano player, something, get in touch with me because I want to put some new music at the beginning of the podcast. And so I would like to use something that is a little original or that someone's playing so that I don't get that infringement copyright thing every single time. So we wrapped up the Up North Cal, the knit along I was having with that whole set of patterns, the hat, the mitts, the socks, and the cowl. And I chose 3 winners from random.org. And the winners for that are number 13, Kim in Chicago, Kovilka, knit a hat, and she won the skein of yarn from Lucky Tweed Kelborn Woolens. So congratulations, Kim. The second drawing that I did was for 5 patterns of mine, so any 5 patterns of your choice, and that goes to Lace Wing on Heather in Maine, and she knit socks and they were lovely. So Heather, you can just get in touch with me on Ravelry and give me a list of 5 patterns and I'll gift those to you. And then the last number I drew was number 28, and that was for a $25 Etsy gift card. And that goes to Michelle in River Falls, Packer Knitting. And she also knit socks. So both those people knit a pair of socks. So they're winners all the way around, okay? So Kim and Heather and Michelle all need to get in touch with me. Michelle, I need an email address to send your Etsy gift card to, and Kim, I need a home mailing address to send that skein of yarn. So get in touch. Congratulations to everyone who participated. You all came out with a project. I always feel like a knit along is a good thing to participate in because you're a winner no matter what. I thought maybe I should show their project. So this is Packer Knitting's socks. She's got the little tassels on the side, which I, personally think is so cute. Of course, I thought it was a cute idea. And then here are Lace Wing on Heather's socks. They're kind of a light gray with different colored toes, which is kind of cute. And then Kim's hat looked like kind of the original hat that I made. She's got the pom-pom on there and so yeah, thanks for participating so much, you guys. I did a baby sweater this week for a friend at the dog park, and I made a little hat and headband, and I'm going to insert a picture right here. Aren't baby things so fun? I knit all of that pretty much in one evening. It just went so quickly. It was worsted weight yarn. I thought the yarn was a perfect fit. That little sweater I've knit before, it's off an old, not super old, but a couple-year-old blog. It's just a little short-sleeved top, so you don't have to knit sleeves, so it goes really quick when you have a last-minute gift where you find out someone had a baby, which I did, and was like, oh, I want to get a gift to them really quickly. And then I just used up the rest of the yarn by the headband pattern is in that pattern with the sweater in a number of sizes. It's a really small sweater. There are not a lot of sizes in it. It's for preemies or small newborns, and that's this baby that was born was a little over 6 pounds, so it worked perfect for that, and I could get it done really quickly. The hat I just cast on and knit a little baby hat and used up every little bit of yarn that I had left, and then I sewed on the button and the little ribbon on the headband to make it, look kind of cute. So yeah, that was fun. That was a really fun knit, kind of broke up the days of knitting on the same big projects that I've been knitting on recently. So anyway, I have a couple of podcasts to tell you about this week. So I don't remember if I mentioned this podcast last time, and I don't want to go back and watch it. So the 2 guys from Seattle have the Fiber Hustle podcast, and I didn't look at the show notes, but if you haven't watched that one, they do sewing and yarn and knitting, and they had they recorded a live Zoom about a week ago, and so that was kind of fun. And then I had someone in my podcast thread where I have a list of video podcasts, mostly that I watch, but other people can feel free to add to that if people are looking for video podcasts to start watching. As they kind of come out, the new ones don't always get seen right away. So Addison, who has the Ruby and Rose podcast, has got about 6 episodes out. She started podcasting in January, and she's 16 years old. But she knits amazing things. And so I watched her first episode this morning, and I really liked it. So I think that'll go on my list of new podcasts to watch. The recipe of the week last time, or the last couple times, have been really well received by all of you. And I wanted to mention that when I said the sweet and sour chicken recipe was gluten-free, because the cornstarch was gluten-free, I also use gluten-free soy sauce. And I didn't mention that. It did say it on the recipe. And most people who can't have gluten know that soy sauce has gluten in it. But just in case you haven't made it yet and you do want it to be gluten-free, or you're making it for like a dinner for somebody who is gluten-free, you do need to purchase gluten-free soy sauce in order to keep that meal gluten-free. And Colette Freeman made it, so thank you, Colette, for telling me that you, as several people made it. I got a couple notes this morning that people made that recipe and really liked it, so that's pretty cool. I'm going to do the recipe of the week right now then. This week's recipe is one I just made the other night, and I don't know if a lot of people make these, but I think a lot of people have had these probably. So this is for crispy smashed potatoes. And this is not a mashed potato recipe. So don't discard it outright if you're not a fan. But you take 1.5 pounds of small potatoes, and I've been using the little fingerlings from my grocery store that come in a little mesh bag. They're the only two of us eating here, so I usually cut most recipes in half. And then you just need oil, olive oil, and coarse salt. And here's the deal. You preheat your oven to 450 degrees, and then you boil your potatoes in some water. And you get them soft, and then you strain them, drain them out, and put them on a pan. So you've got round potatoes rolling on a pan. And you let them cool. And the reason you let them cool for about 5 minutes, and I stuck mine in the freezer drawer for about 2 minutes, and then I could smash them right away, is you take the metal spatula and the top part of it that's a little solid, it's got some holes, and you just smash with the heel of your hand and push down, and the potato will mash out. So I've left the skins on, and they kind of help to hold parts of the potato together, and then other parts of it will just kind of smash flat. And I let my husband do the smashing last night, because your hand can get pretty hot if you're pushed for time and you're trying to smash them quickly. And he said, "Are you serious? You want me to do it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you can learn how to smash these." So he smashed them. Then you drizzle those on the top of each potato. You drizzle some olive oil and you sprinkle some salt, and you put them in your oven at 450 degrees for 15 minutes. And then you flip them over and you drizzle them again, and you put more salt on that side, and you cook them again for 15 minutes. And they get really crispy, almost like a hash brown on the edges, and then a little bit softer in the middle. We put some Parmesan, just sprinkled Parmesan on the top of, 9 potatoes. We have 9 little potatoes on the pan, and we sprinkled a little Parmesan on them and put that back in for, 30 seconds so that it got a little warm. And then it's just a really fun way to make a different kind of potato dish. My husband grew up in a meat and potatoes family, and so he kind of gets over potatoes sometimes, like he just doesn't want it again. He would much prefer to have rice every night of the week. But I don't want to have rice, so I will put this in the recipe section. But it's super simple. It just takes a while because you have to boil them and then bake them. But it's not hands-on time that you have. Like, while they're boiling, you can do other things, and then while they're baking, you can do other things. So from start to finish, it's probably about a 45-minute process. So if you're going to start 10 minutes before supper's on, you're not going to get them done. But just let them 450 degrees. And so it's a hot oven with lots of oil and salt, and really good. Okay. So there's your recipe of the week this week. Some of you gave me some really nice comments and feedback about how I manage doing the podcast. And I have had a couple people reach out and talk to me about how that they would like to start a podcast, or that they would like to start writing patterns. And I think that's great. All I will say is it is surprisingly a lot of work. And so I just thought it would be interesting for all you to know. Like, today I had to take the table apart and get out the sweater and print the stuff and organize my notes and get the books ready and all that. And, that took me all morning, and it's now 1:23. And I haven't had lunch yet, again, because I just, try to plod through getting everything organized. I try to keep it kind of in an order. And I know that there are some people out there who sit down and talk for an hour and don't edit any of it. But that can't work at my house because I got garbage men and construction guys and a dog. And today the husband stayed home and I didn't know he was staying home. So, I have to kind of work around that too. And so things just take a little longer and I get interrupted. So I just would have to edit that out. It wouldn't be comfortable otherwise. So anyway, I really appreciate your kind comments on letting me know that you didn't mind hearing me ramble on and on about how I put this podcast together. Anyway. Let's do the books, okay? I finished a new book, and I can't give it a huge thumbs up. It wasn't intriguing, inspiring to keep reading, but it was a good story. And so sometimes you're just in the mood for a good story, and then other times you need something to kind of distract you. And I found that I would have preferred to have more of a distraction this time, maybe a little more action. But the book was good. It's called A Place for Us by Fatima Farheen Mirza. I'll show you what the cover looks like. Sometimes I recognize that I've read a book just by what it looks like on Audible. So that's why I always show you guys the sheet of paper. This is the first novel in Sarah Jessica Parker's new imprint. So she is doing books now, the actress, and this is her first novel that she published. I wanted to read this because I really wanted to read about another culture. I feel like it's really easy to read the same types of books all the time, and I felt like reading a book about the Indian culture would be enlightening for me. And so I wanted to read about it. And here's the description. As an Indian wedding gathers a family back together, parents Rafiq and Layla must reckon with the choices their children have made. There is Hadia, their headstrong eldest daughter, whose marriage is a match of love and not tradition. Huda, the middle child determined to follow in her sister's footsteps. And lastly, their eldest son, Amar, who returns to the family fold for the first time in 3 years to take his place as brother of the bride. What secrets and betrayals have caused this close-knit family to fracture? So that's what it's about. It's told in 2 parts. The first part is all the wedding and mostly told about Amar, the son who has had issues and kind of gone wayward, and kind of from the children's point of view of how things looked. And then the second half of the story is from the father's point of view. And wow, does it change your viewpoint? So it wasn't until I got to the second half where I was like, man, kind of misunderstood father. Aren't parents often misunderstood when children are angry? I don't know. It really flipped things on its heels for me. And so in that regard, then I liked it a lot more. So it's a 16-hour book. It came out in June of 18, and it has 4.5 stars on Audible, so it got good reviews, and I learned a lot. There were a lot of traditions, a lot of customs, a lot of things about language and barriers. So, in that regard, I felt it was great. Ironically, though, after the book that I talked to you all about last week, Harold Fry, and that people got in touch and said that there was a sequel or second book in that. And so I was like, oh, I really wanted to get through that one so I could get to this one. And this is The Love Song of Miss Queenie Hennessy, and it is Harold's story, again, told from Queenie's point of view. Here is the cover. And again, just like that book, ironically, you're reading the backstory, and from her point of view, you're like, oh my gosh, So if you did not love Harold Fry, or didn't think and thought it was okay, I really highly recommend Queenie, because it gives you a backstory that is so different from what I expected. I just didn't I just didn't think it was going to be like that. So I'm almost done. I've been listening to it nonstop for 2 days. It's a 10-hour book. It came out in March of 15, and it has 4.5 stars on Audible. Again, and this is the little blurb. A runaway international bestseller, The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry followed its unassuming hero on an incredible journey as he traveled the length of England on foot. Queenie Hennessy, writing from a hospice to say goodbye. Harold believed that as long as he kept walking, Queenie would live. In this poignant parallel to Harold's saga, acclaimed author Rachel Joyce brings Queenie's voice into sharp focus. Setting pen to paper, Queenie makes a journey of her own. A journey that is even bigger than Harold's. One word after another, she promises to confess long-buried truths. There were times when I was walking this morning and I was like, oh my goodness. So you think you know the whole story when you're watching Harold walk? You don't know the whole story. You know, he's not telling the whole truth, and he doesn't know the whole truth. And so I found this sequel to be excellent, and I'll finish that this afternoon, just the last little bit, so I don't quite know how it ends, but I just want to share a little something today. I had someone, and I'm not sure if she's a viewer or not, get in touch on my website or on Instagram and ask me if I would help her figure out a pattern. And I said sure, and she just had a question, a newer knitter, and then she sent me a link to the pattern, and it's really cute. So I thought, I'm going to print it out and share it with all you. So she was knitting this washcloth, and it's called Diagonal Knit Dishcloth, and it's on the Illuminator. See that word? I'll put it on the screen. It's on the Illuminator's website, and it says, I love Grandma's favorite bias knit dishcloth, but sometimes would like a little pizzazz to keep it interesting. Here's my favorite variation. And it's just a dishcloth knit with some mesh in the middle as you're going. And I thought it was really cute. It was a free pattern. It came out in 2008, so it's been out there. Some of you probably have already knit it. But I don't knit a ton of dishcloths, but I could use some new ones because some of mine are getting a little raggy. So yeah, I thought that was kind of cute. And I helped her through the repeat. She just didn't understand how the pattern was written, and I think that can be one of the hardest parts of knitting is pattern reading. I think you need classes on how to read patterns in knitting because everything's abbreviated or parenthesed or bracketed, and that can be really a challenge to learn how to read that. So anyway, I helped her out a little bit. Let's do the sweater of the week first this week. Then I have a surprise. So I am wearing Maud, and I have 2 versions of the Maud pattern. And for some reason, I thought I had talked about this before, but I went and looked, and I don't think I have. So I thought this would be appropriate today for my little kitchen joke that I did first thing because it looks kind of like an apron. And it is by Julie Weisenberger of Coco Knits, and it came out in 2010. And it is basically a cross-backed, can you see that top picture? I will turn this around. But it is a cross-backed kind of tank that you wear over. It's long. It is made out of worsted weight, 18 stitches and 24 rows and 4 inches on a size 7 needle. And what I tell people when I have this sweater in, not sweater, but you know, garment in sweater class is that it is great for large group knitting where you can get distracted and have a problem because it's all stockinette. So I'm going to try to hold this up to see if you guys can see how this, but from this side to this side and everything in between is all stockinette. You cast on and you go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth all the way up. So it was just great group knitting. I would take it to knit group. That was the only time I knit on it. And you know, stockinette is easy to not mess up because you just over and back, and there's no shaping until you get to the underarms. You're going back and forth that whole way, depending on what size you make. So there are sizes small, medium, and large. Then 1X, 2X, and 3X. So 6 sizes. 36-inch bust to a 53.5-inch bust. The length goes from 28 to 31 inches, and so easy to lengthen if you're tall and need to make it longer. And the sizing is generous, but it can be, easily adjusted because it overlaps on the back and it hangs open. So if you have a wider hind end, it's going to hang open further than if you don't have a hind end or you have very narrow hips. It's not going to close as much in the back. It was a really fun knit to make. I really liked it. And what I did is I knit them both in linen. The yarn that they called for is a Merlin, Merlin, a linen merino blend from Louette, and then Malabrigo organic cotton, and then Alana Grossa organic solid. So they're doing kind of summer weight yarns for this garment. There are knitting tutorials on her website to get through this, and it's just a really fun layering piece. It's basically a tunic, and it has optional pockets. I do not have pockets on this one, and this is a tweed linen. It's kind of just tweed that I got from, it's called Garden Tweed from Webs, I think. Got a big bags of it, so I had a whole lot of it. And then you just have these two straps. So I'm going to kind of show you how this goes. So this was a brown linen, which most of you know me well enough to think, how would I ever have thought to knit this in brown? But I think what happened is I got this yarn on sale years ago, and it was a really good deal, a couple dollars for a ball of linen. And I thought, oh, I'm just going to buy it all. And then I never wanted to knit anything out of it. So it worked really well for me to knit this. So now you can see how that back goes like this. It just crosses over. And on the mannequin, it hangs completely shut, but it can, hang open a little bit so I made a fairly large size to go around the biggest part of me. I'm trying to, lay that. I will say that out on Ravelry, there is a really beautiful mod with some embroidery on the front. And I think if I remember correctly, they're cherry blossom branches, and there are just a few of them. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to do the embroidery on the front of a mod because I saw that one. I'll try to put the picture in here if I can grab it off of Ravelry. So when I got the whole thing done, it was just kind of blah. And I thought, well, I'm going to wear a bright color underneath it. And then I decided to ask a friend to help crochet around here with a chain of the pink and some of the pink for the pockets. They're just patch pockets and sewn on afterwards. They certainly do not have to put the pockets on there. I just thought it kind of popped it up a little bit. So this is Maud today. And I will take a picture of this one later as well and put it in here for you all to see. Voila! I have a new shawl design out. You guys are going to be the first ones to see it if you're looking at this in or around April 28th. It was supposed to be a shawl that went live for the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival and a collaboration with Toad Hollow Yarn. They have kitted this up, and it is based on the theme of their fairy tales for the year, and this is Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. And I'm just tickled pink that they asked me. I got to choose which fairy tales I was most interested in, and then they dyed the yarn, and here is the name of the pattern. It is the Hi Ho Wrap. It can be worn multiple ways. Amber took the pictures for me because I couldn't get together with my photographer and my model. And so I sent it to her, and Heidi so generously said that she would do it for me because there's not many 16-year-olds who want to wear a Snow White rainbow shawl, correct? But this is what I wrote. I was tickled to design this fairy tale collection wrap for the ladies at Toad Hollow. When offered, I chose the Snow White themed yarn because the possibility of playing with mini skeins representing the 7 dwarfs. This is a checklist pattern with repeating sections using fingering weight yarn and an easily memorized pattern. It works up in 2 sections, with the first repeat of the dwarfs being the high section and the reverse repeat of the dwarfs being the hoe section. It can be worn as a shawl, a wrap over the shoulders, a scarf, or buttoned together as a poncho. And since I wanted to have this already buttoned to show you, this is not the way everyone would wear it, and I didn't button the whole thing, but there are buttons along the edge here, and then there are holes along the edge here that can be buttoned through because there are yarn overs. There are also buttonholes on the edge of the shawl here. So if we unbutton these, then I can show you the rest. So I think most people would wear a rectangular shawl kind of around their shoulders. And so that is one way that you can wear it, just as a long wrap. And here are your 7 dwarf colors. And you have a little flower open work stitched pattern here for Snow White and her flowers in the forest. And then you have a single kind of rows of color here, and then you have a textured pattern that goes all the way across the back. So you can also wear it as a scarf and just drape it around your shoulders, and you could flip this up and over, and it could be a scarf that you're wearing. Or if you buttonhole the 2 ends together, it becomes a loop, and then you can wear it as a cowl up and around your neck this way. Is up close of that section, and then the stripes, and then you have this centered section which has textured stitches in it. Really easy knits and purls all the way through it. This centered white section can be very short if you're always going to wear it as a poncho. So you can button it up and you just measure as you go the circumference that it needs to be to go around your shoulders, and you keep that center section short. If you make it longer and you want to wear it as a poncho, then all that extra fabric kind of just hangs down in the back, which is how we photographed it, the longer version. And then at the other end, you have these buttons. So there's Snow White and her 7 dwarfs. And these buttons were made by an Etsy seller, and I found them and contacted her and asked her if she would be willing to do custom orders for people if people really wanted to go all in with the Snow White theme. But you can certainly put any colored button on the shawl. You can leave the buttons and the buttonholes off. You do not have to do that section. But I do have a link to Buttons by Robin on Etsy for anyone who is really wanting to do kind of the whole kitschy rainbow themed, and the buttons are featured on the project page, front of the pattern page, sorry. And these are the different ways that Heidi wore the shawl. We do have an extra an extra section of photos at the back for different ways. Different ways to wear the shawl. Didn't she do a lovely job for me? Never modeling before. It's so nice of her. So I'm tickled pink. The kits went on sale today at Toad Hollow, and they're announcing their colorway and their scheme and all of that today. And then on Tuesday, my podcast will go live with the actual shawl. We did not kit these together because we weren't going to Maryland, and not everybody's going to want the kit to make the shawl, and so you're going to buy them separately. You're going to buy the shawl from me, and you're going to buy the yarn from them. So I also have a couple of test knitters who are knitting the shawl up in just a couple of colors. So if you have a lighter colored fingering weight 2 skeins, and then you have some minis of your own, if you have another fingering weight skein that you like that coordinates with, then you could do this all in 2 colors. So there will be sample pictures out on the project page on Ravelry that will have this done up in like an all blue, really pretty. And then there's a blue and gold. So there are sample knitters who knit for Toad Hollow to give you other options, not only of other yarns, but their yarns that could be used to knit this. If you just don't want to do the whole Snow White theme, then you don't have to. I really enjoyed designing this. It's kind of a fun knit. You get to do something different every so often. Having the different mini skeins for each of the dwarves was really fun. And those sections are short, and so you're striping, and you know how stripes kind of motivate you to move along because you want to get to the next one. So then I added this little section here to kind of keep that going. And then this section is quite long, but you do have some textured stitches, but you also have some stockinette, and you could certainly do this entire section in stockinette if you chose to. If that's your, preference, you love miles of stockinette. And then you do the opposite. Once you get halfway, the pattern tells you that you're halfway there, and then you go down to the other end. So you have a high all the way up, and then the same stitch patterns going back the other direction. There will be a coupon code for people tomorrow who are logged into my website. So if you've already done that, you've got those bases covered, then you will see a coupon code out for that. And I do think I will have the pattern on a slight discount for the first couple of days, just for publication's sake. The pattern is quite long. It is 11 pages because it's checklist, but you can checklist everything all the way through. If you haven't seen one of my patterns before, this is how they're set up. So they give you what you do in each row all the way down, and you can just check it off as you go. And it makes it really easy to walk away from a project for a while and come back to it, which I'm notorious for. I really like coming back and going, well, now I know where I am because I was keeping checklists for the first 3 sections, and I know that that's where I left off. So I do really like that part. So I have a little story to tell you, of course, with this. I have a wonderful tech editor, and she got back to me after she got the first draft of the pattern, and she's really good at finding things, checking things off. And she said, in every pattern that I write, I have my romance copy, which is the little bit up here. What inspired the pattern, why I wrote it, what got me started. And then I have a quote in all of my patterns, former English teacher, gotta have my quotes in there. And in the quotes, I had attributed where they came from. And she got in touch with me and she said, did you mean to spell dwarves, D-W-A-R-V-E-S? Or did you mean to spell it correctly and spell it dwarfs? D-W-A-R-F-S. And I said, no, I meant to spell it correctly with a V. And she said, no, you meant to spell it correctly with an F. And come to find out, we went out and looked, and the only place that uses the word dwarves with a V is in the Hobbit series. Otherwise, the technically correct term is dwarfs, and the name of the movie is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And that just sounds so wrong to me to have an F in there. It sounds, just incorrect. But anyway, here are the 2 quotes that I chose to use. Over the 7 jeweled hills beyond the 7th wall, in a cottage of the 7 dwarfs, dwells Snow White, fairest one of all. Magic Mirror. And then the second one, remember, you're the one who can fill the world with sunshine. Snow White. And me in bright colors. So this is a Walt Disney production from 1937, and I just felt honored and thrilled to use their amazing yarn. They have a great sense of yarn colors and tonality, and you could certainly do this shawl in any of their tonal yarns and stripe it in any way that you wish. But don't you love a good rainbow? And I don't think that this screams rainbow in the sense that some rainbows do, right? I mean, I did it in rainbow order, but you wouldn't have to. You could mix them all up and put the black up here and the orange, and then it wouldn't look like so much of a rainbow. So anyway, super excited to have this giant shawl design come out. It took a lot of knitting and ripping. The original idea was that it would just be one skein of yarn and one set of minis, and we just couldn't get a long enough piece. The width of the wrap was narrow to try to make it longer, and it was too short, and I wasn't happy, but I was hanging in there, right? I was sticking to my guns. I was going for it, and then Mary Beth and Helen said, "We'll just put another skein in the kit, Corey." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that makes it so much better. It makes it more wearable. It makes it so I ripped the whole thing out and sent it off to a sample knitter. Thank you, you know who you are. And said, please knit this for me, because at the time my thumb was really acting up, and I had knit half the shawl and had to rip it out and start over, and I didn't think I could get it re-knit with my thumb issues. Now since then I had got injections in my thumb, you'll all remember, and thank goodness I did, because the surgery didn't happen this month as it was supposed to do for that darn thumb joint. So I just really need to thank those people who hung in there and knit this on a pretty tight turnaround deadline, because it's quite a bit of knitting if you are doing the long version with using both skeins of yarn. So we did have some of the mini skeins left, so let me tell you that part quickly. The Toad Hollow yarn is 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon, 400 yard skein. So it's a little plumper fingering than like a 463, which I really like. And the mini skeins were the same, and they were 80 yard mini skeins, 20 grams, one skein each of 7 colors. However, you can do as few as you want, but that means that there were 560 yards of fingering in the striping sections, and you don't use it all. You have 4 grams of each color left over times 7, so 28 grams left over out of 560 yards, and that would be how many? 20 grams times 7, 14, 140. 140 grams, so bigger than a fingering weight, an extra fingering weight skein. Anyway, you could leave off stripes, you could make the stripes narrower, you could do all different things to get this to be. The final finished measurements of this shawl are 22 inches wide and 68 inches long. I knit the whole thing on a US size 6 24-inch circular needle, because it never gets any narrower or wider. The cast on number is the cast on number for the entire thing, and it is 22 inches. So there you go, that wide. I hope you like it. I hope you are interested in going and purchasing some Toad Hollow yarn, because for me, that's what it's all about. Using wonderful yarns from yarn dyers and trying to make them shine and be super happy and fun. I don't think that any of you who have watched my podcast for any period of time will be surprised that this is my design. One more way that someone could wear this shawl is by seaming this together here and working it in the round up to a certain point and making that a sleeve. So that would be another way that someone could make this work for them. You could seam it after you were done. You could make it narrow so the sleeve was quite fitted, but that is another option for wearing the shawl. I have a couple of tips and tricks for you today. So the first one is something funny that I thought of as I was getting ready this morning because, we're 2 weeks from the previous podcast. So we're 2 weeks closer to gray hair and grown out. Look at how long I've let these grow out. I just keep filing the tops off because I have terrible nails. And so I just thought if I just keep filing them, eventually they'll just have that little bit of gel on the tips. Don't look too bad from a distance, right? It looks like they're done. But when you look at them up really close, oh dear. But this is a product that I use on my hair. And I don't know if everybody knows about this. This is Magic Root Cover Up. And I wouldn't mind being gray. I would love to be platinum. I would love to have short platinum sassy hair. That would be amazing. But as the grays are growing out, you get that line. And as the line gets further out, my hair kind of blends a little better. But at first I get kind of a weird. So this is just a spray tip. And you just spray right there or right here. Just a little bit of brown. It washes right out. It works great. I got it at the grocery store a couple years ago, and I use it between hair colorings just to keep that gray from being quite such a line, just such a weird line. Mine is getting, grown out further and further. I'm just hoping that it would be more white than it is. It's still kind of mousy brown and gray. So anyway, there you go. L'Oreal Magic Root Cover Up. You might want to invest in some of that if you have to do some public, zooming. Might help you out, make you feel a little better. Okay, then I have a tip or trick about, and I think I've shared this before, but I had someone ask me about how much yarn would you need to hold back for something. Like, how do you know how much yarn you're going to need to finish a hat, or let's say you're working on the end of the shawl, that kind of thing. And this is the tip that I gave her, and she was asking specifically about a project I had knit, but it made me think of this. So I have a start of a project on the needles here, and I want to knit 3 more rows, but I don't know if I have enough yarn left, right? So what I will do is I will measure off from my nose to my fingertips. So a yard, that's a yard of yarn. And I'll do that 5 times, 2, 3, okay? And then when I get to the 5th time, I put a slip knot in the yarn, like that. Then I knit away, and I'm knitting a plain, and I'm increasing on this round, so I can't knit too much, but let's just say I was knitting around, and I come all the way around, and I haven't gotten to that slip knot yet. Then I know that my length of yarn that it takes me to get around my circumference is shorter than 5 yards. And if I get to the slip knot before I've gotten all the way around, I know that it takes me more than 5 yards to get to that point. So then what I will do is I will adjust this forward or backward and knit another round. And I often do this while I'm in the process of knitting a pattern, when I know that I'm designing it and it's going to be an issue with yardage, and I need to know how much yarn it takes me to get around or over and back or around the sweater or around a sleeve before I'm going to alternate skeins or change skeins. And so that's the little tip that I use to know that, okay, how many yards do I have left of my yarn? I have 20 yards left. So how many rounds can I get in with that? Well, easily I can get 3 yards, 3 rounds done of that yarn. I hope that was clear. But yeah, it works for me. It gives you an idea of how you're knitting at your gauge for your project. Gives you an idea of how much yardage it will take to complete the rounds that you're working on, or the flat, whatever project you're working on. And then you can kind of estimate, can I get around one more time? Now, if you haven't checked that number before you get to the end, you can estimate. You can just kind of estimate and say, I think it's going to take me 2 yards to get halfway. So then you don't have to knit all the way around and run out of, you can knit, put a marker halfway across and then check yourself with 2 yards and say, okay, you could even divide it into quarters if you were getting down there. But it's just one way of kind of checking yardage off for knowing how much more you have to knit with the yarn that you have on hand. Okay, so those are your tips for today: hair color and length of yarn ends. Okay, some of you are not on Instagram, so I'm going to share a little story that happened this week, and just so that you can be part of the fun. I, in February, saw a post on Instagram for some yarn, and I can often fall down a rabbit hole on Instagram and buy things that I see. And so I was like, that's gorgeous. I really want to purchase that. And I thought, no, too much yarn. You have too much yarn. You don't need to buy anything else. And so I didn't purchase it. And then I saw it again weeks later, and I thought, oh, I really need to get that yarn. And so eventually I went out and purchased this yarn. There you go. See all the color? There you go. Okay. And this is just lovely. Look at these colors. Oh, just so amazing. So I'll show you all this one. It's by Kate Celine out of the UK, and she's a stitch to follow on Instagram. Her Instagram stories are hilarious. And I bought 100 gram, 250 meter DK skeins, and I bought the entire rainbow. This is how she had advertised it. This is how I purchased it. And when I got it, weeks later, because it has to be dyed and then it comes from the UK, when I got it, I posted a picture in a text message group, and I got a message back from Amber, and she said, I bought the same yarn. And I said, oh, what did you buy? And she said, the exact same yarn. DK weight, every color of the rainbow. And I said, how can that be possible? Like, we talk all the time. How can we not have said you bought it, and why didn't I say that I bought it? And she's like, well, I have no, and I think the reason I didn't fess up that I bought it, because it was expensive. Like, it was not cheap to buy 8 skeins of yarn from the UK, right? And so I don't think I wanted to fess up that I had ordered it. But I said, when you get yours, we have to take a picture. We have to take matching pictures and put them up on Instagram. And so I sent her a picture last week because she'd gotten her yarn, and I'll put that picture in here. Kate Celine was just tickled. She got in touch right away, and she's like, oh, this just made my day. This is so funny. I can't believe 2 friends who live in different states but are talking all the time ordered the exact same set. Like, we didn't get fingering, and we both have a plan for it. I'm going to make a design out of it, and Amber's going to do a blanket for Heidi. It was just it was such a fun day. Not only does it have black stripes, or speckles, but it has colored speckles in it. That's what I think is just so fun about it. Yeah. So, who'd have thought, right? What do they say? 6 degrees of separation? That's how it works. Just jumping in here to say that if you would please subscribe to this podcast, hit the thumbs up button or comment, I would really appreciate it. All those things help make the podcast experience better for me. And we have reached 3,500 subscribers, and that just tickles me to no end. I just think that is awesome that I can have conversations with people all over the world from my little corner of the dining room, which you've all now seen. And at this moment in time is kind of a disaster. I should take a picture every week. Papers, yarn, mouth spray, hair stuff, phone, little chapstick, all the yarns. Oh dear. So I just want to thank everyone who wished me a happy birthday. I turned 59 on the 19th, and we had a Zoom meeting, and I got to meet some of you, and that was super fun. And people were chiming in all day, wishing me happy birthday, and I kind of planned my day to be successful so that I wouldn't have a down feeling about a birthday coming and going. And so my daughter and I drove down to Shakopee and had tacos, and then we had dessert that night, and it just turned out to be a really nice day. I'd opened some presents from people that I know had come in the mail and gotten some cards, and so it did turn out to be a very nice day. I think for children, doing birthdays in quarantine must be really frustrating. You know, parents want to have first birthdays or 10th birthdays or sweet 16s, and when you're 59, it shouldn't matter, but I love birthdays, and I always think that they're kind of special. It's kind of a day to think about, you know, your life and that kind of thing. So I just want to thank everybody for being so kind about that. Let's do the hellos today. Hellos go out to everyone who comments on the podcast from the previous week, and then I also try to go into the Ravelry group and pick up anybody who has, you know, sent me a message of any kind. So hi to Sandra Boyle and Dial Butts and Bonnie Linasicome, who wrote a really nice note this week, and Jan Atkinson and Kathy B. And Pat House, who I think has a nasty mother-in-law. Pat, she knit something really nice for her mother-in-law, and her mother-in-law didn't want it. So you might have a really nice mother-in-law, but that wasn't a nice thing to do. And Deb Vandermolen, who knit an Afghan and talked to me about that, and Edina Cole and Velda Lacoste, and Emily Doyen and Ann Caddy. And hello to Bonnie Glass and Stacy Feichner and Mary B. and Julie Smith, who I made not grumpy after the last podcast. I had a grumpy day last week too, on Friday. I just was really down in the dumps. And hello to June Clifford and Amber Keller and Danielle Brown from Kentucky, because we have two of those. And Jennifer Page and Melanie Cahoon, who had a birthday as well. And Judy B., who likes to make supper and then have a little rest, like me. And Amy Mickelson and Janet Robertson and Timberly Whitesell and Kara Parkman and Robin Gasser and Stephanie Haberman. And hi to Peggy Bork and Terry Monk and Olivia Mankey and Eileen Tomorrow, and who I made not so grouchy. And Chris Osborne, hi Chris, and Mary Simmons, hi Mary, and Sharon of the Knit Style podcast, and Karen Spalding and Amy Blandford, who says, Corey, you are an expert. She kind of took me to task. I do know a lot. I just don't want everyone to think that I know everything. And Nancy Allen and Glory Petyo and Janet Overman and Ellen S. and Joanne Goldenberg and Caitlin Proudfoot and Lisa Smith, who appreciates the podcast effort that I put in, which is really nice for her to say. And hello to Margaret Ann Provenza and Christine Boudoin and Jesse's Mom 12 and Emma Butcher, who made the mitts that I showed last time, and Rachel Weisenstein and Melissa and Barbara Plotz and Christine Thomas and Pamela Henley, Amanda 112358 and Linda Gesling, hi Linda, and Sherry Seifert and Tenzi Marcos Bodker and Dawn Overholt and Carol Morrison and Danielle Brown from Texas. And Patty Skaggs and Wisconsin Tatter. And hello to Heather Wilson, who also had a birthday, and Maureen F. and Azelgert, who talked to me a little bit about ripping out, because I said, well, you'll never regret ripping out last time. And Mary Brown scolded me. She said, Corey, I couldn't even believe that was coming out of your mouth. Because sometimes I am the one who says, don't rip it out. Maybe I'm growing up. Hello to Peg Organ and Donna Coffey, who made an Afghan and gave it to people, and they hung it up as a curtain, and it was sagging from their window when she went to visit. A fisherman's rib, I think it was. Sad. And Laura Wojciechowski and Susie Cusey and Michelle of Knit Takes Two and Colette Freeman, who made my sweet and sour dish, and Cheryl Lacemaker and Glenda Bathgate, and hi to Kim Bream Yarnworks and Tanya Brock and Kathy Goodman. And Suzanne Reardon and Jane Taylor and Kelly Mathern. Suzanne, Jane, and Kelly all made the Find Your Fade shawl as their largest project ever. And that is a sailboat sail. It is so big. And hi to Penny and Debbie McKenzie and Lauren Lenke and C. Cam and Jill Jackson and Tiffany Scharf, Connie Simonich, Chantel R., who has a podcast, and Kat Montgomery and Elizabeth Chipchak and Brandy Stoker and Victoria Pulaski and Denise Norber, Lisa H., Don Overholt, who made a Niebling shawl, which is a thing that you'll never see on this podcast. But if you've never seen a Niebling shawl, he was a gentleman who designed lace tablecloths and runners with intricate patterns in them. Herbert Niebling, I'll put it on the screen, that you could Google that and go out and look at those, especially if you're a big lace knitter. Hi Pat, Looney Hiker, and Pat Wagner, and probably knitting Jan B, and Karen H, and Mindy Asplin, and Maggie's Grace, and Connie S, and Penny Gilbert, and from Ravelry, Demi Fraggle, So Run Knit, and Amy Schultz, who all got in touch this week. I had, 200 some comments to answer this week, and I just really am enjoying keeping in touch with some of you. I feel like we're becoming close personal friends. So come on in for a hug, everybody. Let's hug one another. We got to hang in there. We got to stay at home. This is tough stuff for some of us. Really hard for extroverts who get all their energy off of other people. Maybe a little bit easier for introverts, but I don't think it's easy for anyone. I don't think we can do this well because we've never done it before. We've never practiced, so we can't expect ourselves to do it well. We just have to try, right? So I think your best philosophy is do what makes your day better for that day. Whatever it is that day that makes you get through your day or makes it go quickly or makes it, whatever, that's the thing you need to do. And no excuses about it. No, oh, I should have, oh, I wish I would have. You can't second guess this stuff because we've never done it before. We have no practice. So let's kind of wrap it up today. I have a couple of things that I got to get on the computer, and husband moved upstairs to the old toy room, playroom, for his call today because he stayed home and he has a couple late meetings, so he didn't want to be downtown. I really appreciate the time you take to watch my podcast. I appreciate all of your comments. I find them really enlightening and uplifting, and I'm really glad that I can be a part of your day. So for now, remember, no green bananas. Waddle on and keep it colorful. Until next time. Love you all. Bye.